Hello everybody, it's Torrin from WoopaGaming and welcome to a plugin tutorial on how to use Essentials Group Manager. Now basically Group Manager is kind of like permissions, but instead it uses Essentials, and you can set it up to put your users into groups and specific kind of user bases, etc., to allow them to do specific commands, to not allow them, etc. And now using Group Manager you can also use this to set up different world commands, different world permissions, etc. We've had a lot of comments asking us to do a tutorial of this, so I thought I'd get right on it and help some of you guys out. Now, I'm here on the Essentials page on Bukkit. I think you can also go to the Bukkit dev, but this is just easier because I prefer the actual forum. Right, so the ones you're going to want to download are obviously Essentials Core, so let's download that first, and then Group Manager, because that's the plugin we're going to be using. Alright, so now we've got one of those installed, downloaded. Let's open it up in our archiving software. So we have Essentials Jar, Essentials Chat, Essentials Protect, and Essentials Spawn. The only ones we're interested in today are the Essentials Jar and the Essentials Chat. So let's copy those across to our server, which is here. Let's open up our plugins and let's drag them in. And then let's open up our Essentials Group Manager, where the only one we will need is the Essentials Group Manager here. We do not need the bridge, trust me on that. Let's just install the Group Manager by itself. And let's go ahead and set the server up. As a note, I am running CraftBukkit beta build, I do believe, so it is 1.2.3 compatible with Minecraft, so everything should be alright. I will link you to the beta build in the description, just so you can get it. Right, so first time installing, it says Group Manager, enabling Group Manager. Here's all the Group Manager text as well. Enabling Essentials. These aren't errors. It's saying there's no configuration, so it's just creating it, so it's all right. Okay, so let's ignore that for a minute, and then let's go into our plugins, and let's go into Group Manager. We don't need to worry about Essentials, just leave that. So let's go into Group Manager, and I'll start with the two configuration files here. We have one called Global Groups and one called Config. Let's open up the configuration file. And this might look quite a bit confusing, but it is only a few options when you remove all the other text. So first we have the settings option, and this is the op overrides. Now with this enabled, anyone set up as op has full permissions when managing Group Manager. So only set this if you're trusting a few people with the operator status. They will also be able to promote players to the same group or even above if you set a group up which is above an op, which I think op has full permissions anyway, so I don't know how that works. But only enable this is if you're opping people you trust, because anyone who has op with this enabled, when it's set to true, will automatically be able to have full permissions with managing Group Manager. So yeah, be careful with that one. The validate toggle is, with this set to true, Group Manager will attempt to name match by default. So I'd leave that by default by having it on true. We next have some data options. Now this is how often Group Manager will back up to the files, for example user YAML. This one is set for every 10 minutes, and this is set for every 24 hours. It will retain the backup, which is located in Plugins Group Manager Backup, so that they've got a separate backup folder for that, obviously. So if you keep it as default, that should be alright. We've got some logging. Now here we've got a level of detail that Group Manager uses whilst logging. We can set it to all, config, fine, finer, finest, info, off, severe or warning. By default this is set to just info. It's probably best just to leave it on the default. Nothing really fantastic will change if you change it. Right, so now here we have mirrors. Now this is kind of interesting, which I find is a really cool feature. Now obviously with the final release of Minecraft you have the normal world, you have the nether, and you have the end, which is all three worlds, which is quite difficult to manage when you all want people to have permissions, etc. Now what mirrors basically do is you have one parent world, like one main world, so that'll be obviously your spawn, for example. We're not including multiverse in this example. I'll probably cover that later. This one main world is your spawn, where everyone plays, and that's the one where you set up a perfect amount of permission commands, groups, users, etc. You think that's brilliant, and then as soon as someone generates a nether world, someone walks in there, all permissions are set loose because you haven't configured it correctly. What mirrors allows you to do is, as it is demonstrated here, with one main world as the parent, you could have another world, such as the world never, as its child. Now, what this will do is, if you define it to do so, it will generate the users and groups which are exactly the same as the world, but within a different world folder. So, for example, you have, say, like the default users, they can't build when they first spawn into the world, okay? But if the default users travel to the nether, and you didn't have this set up, they could destroy anything, for example. But if you do have this set up, what basically it's doing is the nether world is mimicking the normal world's permissions. So, for example, it's copying the user base, and it's copying the group base. So, for example, if xTorrent logged into your server, and in the normal world he couldn't build, he travels to nether, if you had this up, he still couldn't build unless you changed him to something like a player or a builder. The same goes for the end. It's a fantastic feature, I think. This also works for multiverse. All you need to do is put down the world. So, for example, if we just put world underscore second and then put users, and we don't want it to copy the groups, you just want it to copy the users. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can. That's how that bit works. So if I just get rid of that, because that might screw some things up. Right, so that is basically the config file, which is surprisingly easy after you go through with it. So let's move on to the global groups. Now, this is something I find kind of interesting. Essentials, as you can see, these are all the different commands for Bukkit, for Townie, for Group Manager, for Essentials. They've already predefined a global groups file. So basically, these are kind of like the global group, which can be imported into other group files within your group YAML, sorry. And these can be different in different worlds. So these can be accessed no matter what world you're in. For example, the world, never, or the end. This is quite interesting, so we'll come back to this later once we're in the group's YAML. So I think we're going to head off there now. Here you have your backup, which again is obviously going to be defined by how often you back up, how many hours, minutes, etc. Then let's go into our worlds. Now, obviously, I haven't generated never or the end, so we've only got one world here. This is what you have by default when you start your server up, unless you have obviously generated a never world or the end. Right, so here we have some more files. One is called groups.yml, so let's open this up first. Okay, so this is the group inheritance. Any inherited groups prefix with a G are global groups, which I was talking about earlier, with the massive list of commands which are predefined groups done by the Essentials team, which you can reference here. These groups are defined in the global groups YAML and can be inherited in any world group user. Yeah, so for example, in any of the world's groups. So here we have the groups to begin with. For example, I'll just go over the default one. The default is, well, this is what it's called. So it's going to be called default. And if you set the default to true, that is the group that any new player will be put into. So for example, if I am hosting a server that I just like to play on, and then Sam Kyo likes to join my server, because it's his first time logging into my server, he will be placed in this default group here. Here we have some permissions. This is a Bukkit permission. Sam Kyo has done a really good tutorial on Bukkit permissions, which I will link you to on the screen now. He goes over in detail a lot of it, so we'll come back. You can go review that. I won't go over it today. But this is where you go about adding all of your permissions you want your users to add. Most plugins, not all, most plugins these days will have some sort of permission system where they will allow you to use a command. For example, Magic Carpet. If you want your users to use the Magic Carpet, it has a specific permission node. They can all be found on the thread. I don't know them off by heart, but this is where you add them. Right, now inheritance is something I was going to talk about. You have global essentials default. Now basically what this is doing, this is importing, well I wouldn't say importing, but referencing that global users, or global groups, sorry, from the server file earlier. If I go back to it, global groups here. This is referencing to the essentials default. So it's referencing to this file. And basically, the inheritance is giving them all of these permission nodes in one little sentence over here. So essentials default will give them essentials.help, essentials.help op, essentials list, essentials match of the day, message of the day, essentials rules, essentials spawn, and group manager notify self. So essentially, when they first log in and have no building rights, etc., these will be the commands that they get themselves. And obviously they get the Bukkit default, which I do believe is messaging and listing who's online. Don't quote me on that. I think that's the only ones you get. So if you, for example, if I wanted to make them a builder as soon as they log in, I do g essentials underscore builder. And that's it. They now have got all of these commands. They've all got essentials.afk, essentials.back, home, ignore, kit tools, mail. They've got all of these commands which are set under the builder. But obviously, when a player first logs in, you don't want to give them something like that. Right. So under here we have prefixes, build, and suffix. Now prefixes are the things that appear in front of your name. So for example, here we have a yellow prefix, which is a ampersand sign and an E. I will link all of the color signs in the description as well. For example, all of the codes, as people do forget them. So for example, if I put pro like this, that would be in yellow, following by my name. If you wanted it to remain white, I do believe it's 7, and then it would display your name after that in white. But let's keep it like that. Well, right. For the colours to work, you do need Essentials Chat, which is why I installed it here. Most other permission plugins rely on something like iChat or Hero Chat. Essentials has their own, which is good. Okay, so now we have the build section. This is automatically set to false because you don't want default players being able to join your server and build automatically. So when this is set to false, they obviously won't be able to build. You can change this to true to allow them to build. Okay, so now next we have the suffix, which is what comes after the name. Typically in most servers the suffix is just left blank. I mean, you can include something in it if you want, but I don't really see the point. If we just want to put another yellow suffix at the end, we can just do that, but just leave it blank as normal. So that is it for all of the default person. If we go all the way down to something like the owner, here default, obviously people don't get put into the owner automatically. Permissions, they have a star, and that star means they get all permissions no matter what plugins you add to it. So leave that. Inheritance is admin, which will be down here. Here we have the G Essentials admin, which has all of the Essentials command. Essentials.star gives them access to every Essentials command. And we have obviously prefix, which is ampersand 4. I think that's red. Don't quote me on that. Obviously they can build and they don't have a suffix. So I'm going to have a go at creating my own group, and I'm going to call it... the easiest way to create groups for me is just to copy and paste an existing one. What you want to be careful is YAML files are extremely picky when it comes to spaces. I am using WordPad for this. I do believe WordPad++ is better suited to doing things like this. Don't use Notepad because it's really bad for things like this, obviously, because you can't do proper spaces. When it comes to using spaces, do not use tabs. That will screw everything up. The main cause for most permissions not working is because people have accidentally screwed up the YAML files. The easiest way to check if everything's in line is just to go up and down, making sure it's matching all of the other preset ones, which they will all be fine. So that matches that. They all match, that's all fine. And within the description I will link you to a YAML parser which will scan through your YAML and make sure everything's okay. If it gets no errors, it should be good to go on your server. Right, so I've just copied another group over here, and I'm going to call it the Pro group. And default will be false because I want to be able to add people into that. The permissions, I will just give them bucket.command.kill. Inheritance, I will give them essentials.default, bucket.default, and I think I'll give them g.essentials. I'll give them the builder prefix. So I've just given them the builder. So anyone in the pro category will be given the builder thing, which will allow them to build if I set this to true. Right. So I'm just going to set a prefix as and free, which is for dark aqua, and I'm going to give them a nice prefix like that, which will be pro. So whenever they talk, they will have a little bracket saying pro and then their name, and I do believe their name will be in dark aqua or the colour that you choose as well. In this case, it will also be dark aqua. I've set the build to true because I want them to be able to destroy blocks, and the suffix I'm just going to leave that blank. Right, so I will be adding myself to this group after I've gone over the user.yml. So if we just minimize that, go back into our plugins, and let's go over the users. Right, so this is where all of your users will be added. This is for the main world, obviously. For a more advanced configuration example of the group manager and the users, go to that link there. I will post that in the description as well, so you don't have to type it out, etc. That has a more of an advanced example. I'm going to be showing you the most simple one. So here we have the users, and we have a name, which I think they might be the Essentials team. Don't quote me on that. I haven't actually checked, but I'm guessing it is. So, for example, whenever Snow Leo logs in, they get shoved into the group builder, and they have permissions here and subgroups. So I can change this to, let's say, default, and they'll be put into the default group. They won't be able to build. They only have limited commands. They have no prefix, etc. But I don't want to be doing that. I want to be adding my own group. So I'm just going to type it out here. Make sure it matches up, of course. You want the username, so xtorrent. Put subgroups, put like that. Permissions. So make sure they're matching. Make sure everything is okay with it. And group. This is the group that you're going to be putting them in. So remember, I created Pro earlier. We can put them into the Pro group. So if we save that, and I'm just going to head off to the YAML Parser now. And I will check my YAML files. So let's check my groups to make sure there's nothing wrong. And it detects no errors, so this is good to go. Now, what I will do is I'll purposely create an error. So for example, if I put admin one space along where it's meant to be, and then copy and paste it. Here you go, it says an error on line 11, column 3. So if we go back and correct that, I can't remember which bit I deleted. Oh, it was this one, wasn't it? Let's save it, copy and paste it across, and it says, there you go, it's perfectly fine. Right, so if I just stop the server and reload it, I will show you it will be perfectly fine to load up. So, start the server up. Here we have no errors regarding any of the YAMLs being out of sync. So if I just stop this again, I will show you what it looks like when you do get an error and how easy it is to fix it. So we go into our plugins, back into our groups. Right, so I'm just going to make the same mistake again, and let's put a space on the default so it's out of sync with the other spaces, and save it. And let's launch our server up again. Here you go. We've got some YAML errors. Now this is the most common thing people send us as messages, just sending these errors. The following file couldn't pass on parser, which is the group's YAML. So if we go back to that and we move default, if we move it back, making sure it's all in line, save it, stop the server, and launch it back up, you will find that none of the errors pop up and Essentials is good to go. So if we go into Minecraft, and we go about logging in. Right, so I'm now in my server, and if I go about talking, I should have a prefix next to my name. So if I just go higher, there you go. It says Pro xtorrent in dark aqua, and it says higher. One thing I forgot to mention, guys, is actual adding the permission commands. So if we go into our group manager, and we go to our worlds, into our users, and let's go to the xtorrent, you add your permissions like this. So for example, if I want my player to be able to change the time when they're in the group pro, we're going to want to type essentials dot time, and then we're also going to want to add another permission node, and the way you add multiple permission nodes is just do a comma and then a space. So we're going to put essentials dot time dot set, and now that will essentially allow us to access the time command and allow us to set the time to night, day, etc. And that is how you add permissions to your user's group, which I've just done there. Alternatively, you can put the permissions here by doing a hyphen, I think, and then essentials.time. That will work as well. So you can do it either in the groups or in the player. Personally, I prefer doing it in the player section because, sure, it's a lot easier having it in the groups, but if I have it in the player, then I know who's got what, etc. So for example, I know xtorrent can set the time. So if I know someone's like mucking about the time, I know it's xtorrent, which is me subsequently. One thing I would say is in the group's YML, it is easier to have the global inheritance, like Essentials default, which is a lot easier than having it all messed about in the user config. So if I just start the server up, and I log into Minecraft, xtorrent should be able to do time night, and time day. If I remove that permission node from him, group manager, worlds, users, if I remove those permission nodes, save it, and reload the server. I know Spout people are saying don't reload the server, but it's easier to do it in this video. If I do time day, oh, you are not authorized to set the time. So that is how the permissions nodes work. Right, so you've added yourself to a group, doing it via the configuration files. If you don't have the server being hosted off your local machine like I do, you have it on like a dedicated server, you don't want to keep accessing the files and logging in all the time, you know, all of that stuff. There are a few commands to allow you to do this. So if I just opt myself, just to give myself the benefit of having every single command, if I just say something, there you go, my name is in red because I'm an op, which I do believe is the color code for. So the first command is manu add, and then the player, so xtorrent, and let's move him to the owner group. You are now moved to the group owner. We can now then type munudel, so manudel, and then the player, so for example let's do xtorrent, and this will change me to the default settings, but because I'm an operator it doesn't matter anyway. You can type manu add sub, the player, so xtorrent, and then the group, so just add them to owner again. This add is my subgroup. We can type manu, we need to do the command, manudel sub, then we'll put xtorrent, and then owner. This will delete the subgroup. We can then, type man promote xtorrent owner. This will promote me in the same heritage line to a higher rank. Then we can type man demote xtorrent. Let's go back to default. This will again default me to, it will demote me to the same heritage line but to a lower rank. And then another command is we can type man who is xtorrent, and it will show us what our name is, what group, and if we're overloaded. So I am xtorrent, I'm in the group default, and I'm false. So if I just type manu add xtorrent owner again, let's do man who is xtorrent, we have been moved to the group owner. Now, they were just the basic user management commands. There are a hell of a lot more, which I will link you to in the description. I don't have enough time to cover them all in this video. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this has helped you in some form. I've certainly had fun for talking for more than 20 minutes straight. I've never done that before in one of my own videos. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope this has helped you. I'll see you guys later.